welcome to the second episode of the East Meets West podcast, hosted by yours truly, Al Velasco, and my friend and counterpart, KB, Karen Blakeslee. And KB, we're going to start with putting the spotlight on you because the last time we were here, we introduced you as the division manager for the East, thus the East part of the West. And you kind of surprised me personally a little bit with the announcement that you made. So let's talk about that just for a minute. What is your new gig, and just give us just a brief update as to kind of what you're going to be focused on going forward.
You got it. Well, I'm still in the East, live in the East, so staying in that part of the East. But I needed to make a super tough decision and step back from the divisional role, which, as Al knows better than anybody, it is a big role, and it comes with a lot of travel. And I'm in a place where I need to help my dad. He's got Parkinson's and he's struggling, and so I'm going to be moving him out to North Carolina and helping care for him in the evenings. So it was really impossible to keep doing the divisional job, but I am thrilled to announce I'm still staying with the company, and what I'm going to be moving into is a coaching position. So, and really leadership coaching, most specifically coaching with our branch managers across the country. We have over 100 of them, and I could not be more excited. I think of them as, this isn't a very sexy term, as one of our colleagues would say, but I think of them as the backbone of our company. They're the boots on the ground leaders. And they give us so much of our information up that we use to take forward and make the company stronger, better, faster, cooler. And they take their same leadership down to their teams on both the sales and the ops side and the branches. But I don't know. We've got a guest on today that you're going to introduce in a minute. But Al, you were a branch manager before. I was a branch manager before. Did anybody put you through some formal training?
No, and I think it probably shows.
To me, it is the quintessential meaning of OTJ training, man. It's like, hey, you're really sharp and smart, and you're doing a great job, and you're bringing in good business. And, would you ever like to manage this branch? Well, I don't know how to do that, but sure. Like, okay, man, don't worry about it. You got it. And then off you go to the races, right?
They put a crown on you and you say, you're the branch manager. Here you go.
Exactly. And you just sort of find your way through. So I'm excited to bring hopefully some coaching to the managers that will give them insight into areas where they might not have ever had training or gone deep, and more than anything, really connect all of them so that they can bounce stuff off each other, pick each other's brains, and just help us all.
Well, that's great.
That fabric that we knit even stronger.
Well, new role, but you're still going to be around, and you're still going to be around the podcast. So we'll see you. So it's not goodbye. It's just a different role, which is great for you. And everybody that knows you know that has always known that family comes first with you, and you've got an amazing family. And so I don't think anybody's surprised by the reasons, that you looked to transition to a new role. So with that said, we're still dealing with kind of a crazy market right now in the mortgage business, right? We have always talked about 2023 was tough, and our hope is that, we would show up to work January 1st in 2024, and everything would be perfect. It would be fixed. It would be new. But certainly that's not the case. So just going to, in the Herds the Word segment, just provide a couple comments, I think, relative to the market. Obviously, the big question is, where are interest rates headed? We had the big employment report last week that, from our perspective, didn't go the way that we wanted to. I don't know about you, KB, but I'm at the point now with, the Fed and forecasts. I asked somebody the other day, when was the last time that the Fed got it right? when was the last time that they came and they gave a forecast and they said, hey, we're only going to cut 3 or 4 times, and they really ended up cutting 3 or 4 times? It seems to me that, a lot of smart people obviously involved in the Fed, but nobody really knows where this thing is going. I think I have a bet with somebody that by July 1st, interest rates will be at 5.5%. I'm going to stick to that.
Good.
Right? I don't know
I
what you
was
think.
I was describing it the other day. I know you've got 4 kids, Al, and I got a big old passel of 6. But it reminded me of when the kids were little and they'd be like, Casey's touching me, he's touching me, and then like, no, I didn't even touch her. I didn't go near, he's hitting me. No, I'm not even in the same room. And it's like, to me, the Feds, it's this yin yang between the Feds and the market too, because the Feds are coming out, they're making these statements, they're having their regular meetings, they're having commentary between meetings, but the market is so overreacting to every single, literally parsing down to the words in each phrase, that it just becomes really, really hard to predict.
Yeah. I think you almost have to kind of look outside of, all the Fed noise. And I
Yeah.
was reading something recently that talked about the percentage of credit card delinquencies that are just kind of going through the roof, right? So it really appears as though part of the economy is being powered by borrowing, which has probably always been the case to some extent, but I certainly don't think that's a good thing in this environment. And then when you look at the portion of the jobs that are being created that are government jobs or part-time jobs, I think those numbers are pretty telling too. So
Yeah.
end of the day, we don't know, where we're going to be. I think we all believe that rates, will be lower toward the end of the year, whether or not it's the first quarter or second quarter. We don't know. It appears as though inventory levels, are improving in a lot of our markets, which I think from our perspective at PrimeLending, we've seen applications increase steadily through the year. So I think that's a testament that, the consumer's probably getting a little bit more used to interest rates in the 7% range, and that probably the biggest factor that our folks are dealing with is inventory. So
Yeah.
hopefully, over time, inventory gets better, and that provides us the lift that we need.
Yep. I agree. I know Chairman Powell was on 60 Minutes Sunday night and had a fair amount to say, but yeah, not all of it positive. But these guys, their whole job is to stay, be just moderate their words to the nth degree. And we were really hoping he would come out. They did exactly what we thought. They came out, kept rates steady. We hoped there would be language in there indicating that a cut in rates would be fairly soon, maybe March. There was a fair amount of optimism about March. It certainly doesn't sound like March is on the table now, and instead we will be looking at the second quarter. But one way or another, they're coming down this year. How
Right.
fast and by how much? Those are the question marks, right? But to your
Well,
point, Al, some really good economic signals out there. Really good economic signals.
yeah. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. I think everybody listening to this podcast is involved in the mortgage business in some way, shape, or form, and lower interest rates would be good for everybody. So
Right?
fingers crossed, and hoping that it happens sooner than later. All right,
Right.
so let's transition to or KB, did you want to talk about builder sales, construction perm? I know we had talked a little bit about highlighting our construction perm product. Do you want to get into that just for a little bit?
Yes, I'd love to. Let's talk about the builder sales first, because that is truly where the inventory is growing faster than anywhere else. Like in 2023, 1/3 of the new inventory on the market came from new builds. 1/3, and I think it's going to be that or even higher this year. So that's a pretty staggering number. It's higher than I can remember it all my years in the business. And the builders are doing some fun things, some different things to help consumers, right? They're doing some concessions. They're kind of going back what I think of as old school. They're not throwing in a free refrigerator or a cruise, but they're offering some upgrades. They're offering some buy downs, which we do. We love doing the buy downs so that the homeowners can get in at a lower rate. They're offering we're offering builder forward commitments to a lot of our builders so that they can use their money to buy that interest rate down again, to let a borrower come in a point, 2, maybe even 3 points under the current market. So they've got a lot of tools in their arsenal right now that they're deploying to help keep their numbers up above 25, 30%, and probably maybe even up to as much as 40%, the experts are saying.
Yeah, it sounds like the builders have figured out that the sweet spot for the consumer from an interest rate perspective is somewhere around 6.5%, right?
You're
So,
absolutely right.
instead of taking huge concessions on their sales prices, they're basically, like you noted, doing the old buy downs, which we used to do back when we were originating loans, and getting the consumer in at a interest rate of 6.5% or so, and instead of giving them appliances or a new driveway or a swimming pool, they're giving them a better interest rate, right?
Exactly. That is what people want. And what we're coming alongside with on our side is, in addition to doing some builder forward commitments, so the builders can use their funds to buy the interest rate down, and partnering with them on some discounted rates. We rolled out a brand new 3/6 arm that is, as of this morning, man, it's running right about 6.25. And so that gets those borrowers down into that sweeter spot of affordability and really a payment that they're comfortable with. And it's a short arm. So, we know rates are going to change. We know they're going to go down. And so that gives them some phenomenal flexibility, which is fun, man. I love rolling out new products. And so did our last guest on the podcast, Andrew Stringer, man. That jazzes him up.
Well, he's got a lot on his plate. We'll have to have him back again and have him update on some of the initiatives that he's launching that I think everybody's going to benefit from. Well, that's great. So let's transition to our lens setters. I got that right this time, Katie. Lens setters segment of the program, and introduced to you guys somebody that KB and I have known and worked with for many years, Mr. Mark Raskin. Mark is a branch manager of our Bentry branch located in Dallas, Texas. Mark and his team have nearly 205-star Google reviews with 2 decades experience. Mark has had many accomplishments, including president of the Texas Mortgage Bankers Association, D Magazine's Best Mortgage Professional, Scotsman Guide, top producer, power producer. You get the idea, right? Mark's been around for a long time. He's a graduate of University of Tulsa and the University of Texas at Dallas. Been married to his wife, Lisa, for 21 years. Those of you who have met Lisa know that that's quite a feat that she's been able to endure Mr. Raskin for 21 years.
We love Lisa.
We do love Lisa. And Mark and Lisa are enjoying traveling. And Mark just told me that he recently came back from Cabo, where once again he tried some of their tequila. So maybe we can get into that on a future episode. But obviously, Mark, welcome to the podcast. We appreciate you joining us. And so back many, many months ago, I was in a conversation with Mark. And one of the things I love about Mark, because we've known each other for such a long time, and anybody that knows Mark knows that, he doesn't sugarcoat things, right? If he's got something to say, he pretty much just comes out and says it. But it's always good information. So personally, I've learned that when Mark, pulls you aside and wants to have a conversation with you, you'd be very wise to listen, because he comes from a good place, cares passionately about PrimeLending and the people of PrimeLending. So we were just talking about ways that, both KB and I can, get in front of the sales team more often and to doing it together. And I really started thinking about that. And honestly, that's when we first started thinking about doing a podcast. So in some ways, Mark's encouragement was very big influence on us doing this. So it's fun to have him here. So Raskin,
good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good.
I do need to correct my bio. I think the bio is supposed to read I've been in the business 21 years. Lisa and I are celebrating our 30th anniversary while on the Prime Power Producers trip in Vegas.
Oh,
Nice.
Dude.
So,
congrats.
Yeah, I should have noted that you're old enough to be married for 30 years. I probably should have picked that up. So I apologize to that.
oh, she would have. Lisa probably is already correcting you, not even listening to this right now.
Yeah,
it feels a lot longer than 30.
Sorry, Lisa.
Probably.
You've been suffering longer than 21 years.
It just feels like 21, right, Lisa?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Mark, so I think this is really great that we have you on this podcast right now because, you're a survivor, in the mortgage business. You've been doing this a long time. And I think that there's a lot of folks listening today that probably are in one or two camps, right? So one is they might be questioning whether or not they've got the staying power to stay in this business because it's always so up and down, right? And then I think you might have another group who is entirely committed to being in this industry and they've been in it for many years, but they're trying to figure out, what do I got to do different?
Right.
How do I need to change in order to adapt, to the current market? And, I was thinking the other day and, I, and KB, we go back to the CTX days, that we worked together. Right. So, I think Mark, so let's kind of go back in the time machine a little bit. What year did you join Prime?
Joined Prime 15 years ago, 15 years and a few months ago, after CTX decided to exit the mortgage banking industry.
So, and how long were you at CTX?
About 6 years, and that's where I started. Obviously, I did not start based off my age, I did not start in mortgage banking. I had a good friend of mine who he and I went to another mutual friend of ours' funeral, and we were on our way back having lunch, and he started talking about he was joining he had his own little small broker shop and couldn't deal with running all the day-to-day stuff and decided to merge with CTX, but he knew nothing about corporate America, and I knew quite a bit about corporate America at the time. So he brought me into the business and just literally from driving back from a funeral, and stayed at CTX for about 6 years until it blew up. And that's when I actually made a stop at a local mortgage credit union here in Dallas for about 6 weeks. And then I came over to Prime after that.
So in the time that we've been in the business, KB and Mark, I think there's been like 3 major blowups, in the mortgage market, right? So one was back when we left CTX. I think like you guys, I thought I was going to be at CTX forever. It was a great company, great leadership, great people. And then literally, over a number of months, we get the sad news that, the builder's divesting of the mortgage company, and we're all scrambling around, some of us in leadership, to find a place to go. And we ideally wanted everybody to go together. We actually had a purchasing agreement in place with a lender that we thought we were all moving to. And if I recall, that blew up the day that it was all supposed to close, right? So that left all of us scrambling. And that's when the first group of CTX folks came to Prime. And Mark, you always correct me on this. Were you with that first group, or were you were shortly thereafter, right?
I was 6 weeks later. I moved over to I can't mention the names in case I say anything disparagingly about them, but I moved over to a small credit union owned mortgage bank in Texas, in Dallas, and brought over a half a dozen branches from CTX with me, and then got terminated 6 weeks later. And as I'm walking down the stairs to go to my car, I had not even called Lisa to tell her I just got canned. I get a phone call from Rosanna McGill, who had already heard about it and told me to get my butt over to Preston and Frankfurt. We need to chat, which I did.
Funny. So KB, how about you? How soon did you get to Prime after CTX?
Immediately. Man,
Okay.
I was one of the lucky ones. I got connected to the company and through a mutual friend in the business, and then started talking to Dawn and to Rosanna, and flew out. And that was really all it took, man. Once I met the people, that was lights. It was just lights out, so much better than anybody else we talked to. So I brought the branches in North Carolina and Virginia.
So you guys were lucky, because I think it took me about 1.5 years to convince Prime to hire me. So I was kind of out in the wilderness for like 1.5 years before I came to Prime. So that's interesting. So that's the first blow up, and so then we had the blow up. Most recently, actually, you go back with 2018, right?
Yeah.
2018 was kind of the second big disruptive market, where we found ourselves kind of in dire straits, trying to figure out what do we do. a lot of attrition, just really difficult time in the mortgage business. And then we have, what we most recently went through, right? Which is, 2022, 2023, and all the disruptions. So now in between all those years, we also had many really great years, right? But the reason I wanted to walk through that is that, so I'm going to try to tie a couple different ends here. So I apologize if I feel like I'm going all over the place. So the business is volatile, right? I think that's what that little walk through memory lane shows us, is that this business has always been extremely volatile. The highs are highs and the lows are lows. And so fast forward to today, and even yesterday, Mark and I were on a call and we were talking about kind of where's the business going. And there's a lot of talk about the broker model, and can the distributive traditional retail model, compete with the broker model? We always talk about where the business is going or where we think it's going to go. And then we talk about, well, what's the best model going forward, right? And so, Mark, you have a really, I think, important perspective for us to hear about. Like, from your perspective, how are you looking at this market? How are you changing? And are you optimistic? And do you think that, going forward, the model that exists today is the one that we're going to, be riding out, for the next 4 or 5 years?
Wow, that's about 8 questions there.
Well, you can take your pick.
No, I appreciate it. As with any industry, the model is going to be changing over time. First of all, the 2018 to me was just nothing but a little blip. It was non-existent from my perspective. I mean, yes, our incomes went down for a little bit, but it was for a very short period of time. And then obviously the COVID era brought us a windfall of income, both at a corporate level as well as at every single employee level. I mean, whether it's loan officer, processors, setup, everything. Where does this business model look going forward? I do think that it is going to change. And I think that once we come out of this, there's going to be some survivors, and there's going to be some companies that are not going to survive, and there are going to be loan officers who are not going to survive. And the ones that want it to be like it used to be, I think are going to be the one, both corporate and LO level, are going to be the ones that are going to be left in the dust. Because going back to, I want to make what I want to make, both at the corporate level and at the LO level, with technology in place. I know it's very annoying when we keep hearing our leaders talk about start using the technology more. Well, if other companies are going to use the technology and we choose not to, and we continue to have the labor in there, we're not going to be able to win the easy deals. And so I do think that for us to, as an industry, this is not directed at Prime, but as an industry, for us to survive, we have to be willing to change with it and master the technology and leverage the technology. And it might mean that the survivors are going to have to make the same income, we're going to have to do more loans. But if we master and utilize the technology in doing so, we should still be able to do that and make it home for dinner, tuck the kids in at night. And I guess, some of our cases, Karen, the grandkids in at night, but whatever it is. But I do think we need to be looking at that as an industry and going forward, and the ones that don't, I think are going to be left in the dust. And I think we will see those companies falling over the next year or two, as well as loan officers. So,
man, you started your answer off with such a profound statement, that this industry is always changing, that we certainly have learned to ride the roller coaster, so to speak, over the years, but it's always changing and evolving. And I think oddly, weirdly, perversely, like, we love that, right? I mean, if we didn't, we'd be on an assembly line somewhere, making boxes. But I feel like the changes are at an accelerated pace, much more accelerated than I can remember in any other particular time frame. Whether, like the 3 that Al referenced, there were regulatory changes after 2008 that were really impactful and substantial, but the business kind of still went on as the business went on. And 2018, you're right, we just had tremendous margin compression and just just a really tight squeezed situation in terms of the economy, along with our business opportunities. But the business kind of still went on. Now I feel like how you actually execute it from the very beginning of finding your customers or them finding you, all the way through to what the customer experience is through the loan and how the loans are actually done is just changing. I don't know, daily is an exaggeration, but I don't know if weekly is an exaggeration.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the elephant in the room that with this transition out of this market compared to the previous ones, we've never been impacted by the regulatory LO comp issues like we are now. Because for those of us that have been in the business, go back to when you guys were originating, 08, 09, when things got super competitive and there weren't as many deals out there, you had no problem working for 0 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 basis points, and you were tickled pink to keep it. Now with the LO comp issues, and again, this is directed at the industry, not PrimeLending, it becomes more problematic because the typical loan officers in the business don't have that luxury to be able to work for cheaper to keep the client, so type of thing. And that kind of transitioning back to what I said a little while ago, the companies aren't willing to address that in our industry, and the LOs aren't willing to address that in the industry. I do think we'll end up, being acquired or otherwise out of the business.
Yeah. So Mark, speak to those two groups that I referenced earlier. So the first would be, a loan officer that maybe has 3 or 4 years experience. Maybe this is the first really difficult market that they're trying to navigate.
Yep.
What wisdom would you give folks that are really just trying to figure out if they can stay in this business and succeed?
Well, you've got two challenges. You obviously have the financial challenges. You have your family to feed, obviously. And then the other is you have your emotional challenges, in that you work your tail off only to find out that you lost a deal or what have you. And both of those can be, take your mojo away from a going forward perspective. I think most importantly, surviving, it's mind over matter. You've got to stay positive. People have to buy houses. It doesn't feel like it right now that people are, but I mean, home ownership is almost as recession proof as liquor and tobacco. I mean, people are going to have it no matter what's going on out there. You have to have a roof over your head. The industry is here to stay, and people, like I said before, people do have to have homes. So that mind over matter and staying positive. I do think who you hang with is important. Every one of us has a person or persons in the office. It's like, oh crap, here comes. I'll pick on to Elkins because he's always positive. Here comes Elkins again. Now, what is he going to complain about? Right? Sorry, Tim. But hang around obviously we want to listen to our friends because they're, having challenges as well. But I would compartmentalize that. And if somebody's coming in and you're having a good day, say, hey, Johnny, can we meet at lunch to discuss that? I'd rather, I'm having a real good day. I don't want to repeat yesterday type of deal. So hang around positive people. I think it's important to have a personal board of directors, and it's not just your teammates and your branch manager, but half a dozen people that you can go to from time to time to talk about, what's going on in the industry and what's going on in your career. And, if opportunities come up on picking up a builder account, but they want you to, do some crazy cost sharing with it or what have you, have a board of directors of folks, and you'll find over time they will be as invested in your success as you and your families are. And so they will help build your careers for you, as long as you're sharing ideas and getting ideas from them. So I think both of those are very, very important. The other thing is when the business does pick up and you start making a lot more money, after you pay off whatever credit cards we ran up during these time periods, put it away. The people that have been doing this for a long time.
Hummer.
Yes. The people who have been doing this for a long time have, plaques on the back of the wall. Dear Lord, I promise I will give me one more refi boom. I promise I'll save some this time.
Right.
But the really good times need to balance out with the very challenged times financially so that, it doesn't exacerbate the emotional challenges you have when you're losing the deals that you don't want to lose.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Man.
So now speak to the originator. Maybe is just thinking they got to reinvent themselves. You've probably had to do that a few times, in your career, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
You need to know your why. So I learned that from Building Champions years and years ago. You need to know your why. If your why is solely because you've got friends that made a boatload of money in mortgage banking. It's solely about the money. I don't know if you're going to be able to pull out of the bad times. You'll certainly love the good times, but your why needs to be deeper than that. Whether it's helping people, whether it's whatever you determine your why to be. And so I would obviously always start out with that thing. We do have tools available just because we've had building champions in before. Al and Karen, you guys, I'm sure, have some of the templates available. We can pass it on to people, but knowing your why is the number one, just to keep you focused. What was the second part of that question? I apologize.
No, wasn't really a second part of it. It was just, from an advice perspective,
Gotcha. Always be learning. That's something that when I got in the business, as I mentioned before, this wasn't my first career. I was kind of worried because I didn't even know what the word mortgage was. And here I am starting up in this new job. And I'm like, what if somebody asks me how to spell mortgage? I'm going to screw up. So I learned to be learning from everybody at all times. And it's not just learning from somebody on stage at Sales Rally or going to one of these other things that these people that beat their chests on how great of an originator they are. Hence, some of the people I've worked with in the past. It's learning from everybody. There could be a new loan officer that comes into our branch that has been doing it for 6 months, and we're chatting in a meeting. I'm learning from that person. I'm learning from the receptionist. I'm learning from everybody. And it's not always learning a technique on how somebody sells a mortgage. I might listen to somebody on how they really did a screwed up job and learn, I don't want to do it that way, but I still learn something from them. So always keeping your brain open to learn, in my opinion, is paramount. That to me is the number one, and devoting some time, whether it's per week or per month, of learning some new product, or going back and learning an old product. I mean, when the last boom hit early COVID, I did not know how many R's there were in IRRRL loans. I had never done one before. I'd been chairman circle for between CTX and Prime for 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever done an IRRRL loan when COVID hit. That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I learned really quick because marketing came out with here's a list of possible IRRRLs, and boom, IRRRLs were easy, right? I don't know. I think our team and we did 30 or 40 IRRRLs in a matter of 6 or 8 weeks. I went back on every VA person I knew, and we did such a good job. They got all their people involved. But I took the time to learn something, and Shazam, it was not a hard one to learn, obviously, but always learning is key.
That's great.
So for those people who don't know every acronym in our business, IRRRL is not like a guy down on the corner. IRRRL is a VA refi.
Interest rate reduction loan.
Yes, an interest rate reduction loan. So anyway.
But if your name's Earl, you get a discount if you go to Raskin.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. We give all IRRRLs a discount for sure. For sure. I love the board of directors idea, Mark, because, man, when I was young and you didn't want to be the person who's always asking questions and, nothing like having a big newbie taped to your forehead. But if I went to someone and said, hey, I'm looking for a board of directors as I learn this business and grow and try to decide what direction I really want to focus my business on, would you be on my board of directors, somebody I could come to? I mean, that's like such an honorable thing to ask somebody. And I can't think of anybody who would say no to that. You
need to be transparent and vulnerable with those folks too. Just saying that is they're going to roll their eyes if you don't do anything about it, but you need to be able to go back to them and say, hey, listen, what are your thoughts on this? Or what are your thoughts on that, versus just making personal career decisions on your own.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of another tidbit that I had heard from my old regional at a previous company, even, called Sunday Night Supper. Right now, we'll take any production partner we can get because we need them, whether it be builder, realtor, whatever. But as this business turns around and you've got to pick and choose, spend your time with the people that you're willing to have over for a Sunday night supper. You might not ever have them over, but if I'm thinking, God, how am I going to ever apologize to Lisa by having, again, we're going to pick on Elkins again because he's not on this podcast with us, but how am I going to apologize to her because of having Tim Elkins at our Sunday night supper? It's going to be hard for me to build and continue to maintain a relationship with that person. I may put them on my Total Expert campaign, and if they send me deals, they send them. But if it's somebody that you feel like you can have a little bit of a relationship with, that's the one you want to go deep with and spend all your time and love and affection and and the likes with to build that relationship.
So, Mark, on the board of directors piece, how often do you engage with that group typically?
I don't do it as a group. They're just individual phone calls, because if you do it as a group, then it becomes awkward of, hey, why isn't Al on this call anymore? Type of a thing. So, I mean, y'all, and not everybody knows that they're on my board of directors. Y'all may be on it and don't know it, or you may not be on it and think you are.
Wow. Well, there's food for thought the next time you talk to Raskin, Karen.
I know.
Right?
If I happen to be in Dallas on a Sunday and I don't have a dinner invite, that's a pretty clear sign.
There you go.
Well, Mark, you're an example of a guy that has done amazingly well, in the mortgage business. And I think that you know the business really well. You know how to put deals together. So you're a tactician. But you're also an expert at building relationships and maintaining relationships. And you've also been amazingly well or really good at making those around you better. So I think that if I was an aspiring loan officer or somebody, again, that, has been in this business for 5 or 6 years, I think that they can look to guys like you, and we have guys and gals in this organization that I think one of the things that we probably don't talk enough about at PrimeLending is the amazing variety of success stories that we have.
Yeah.
When people joined our company and they started originating $8 million, and then 3, 4, 5 years later, they're doing 60, 70, $80 million. And I think many of those people have the same characteristics that Mark has, is that he's a great technician. He can build relationships, and then he brings value to everybody around him. And so I think that those are all traits that I think everybody would do very well to emulate. So, Mark, we obviously appreciate everything you've done for the organization on a personal level. I think I can speak for KB. You are a pain in the butt sometimes, but you're our pain in the butt. And, we've all bettered our careers for being around you. So, with that said, KB, you don't need to say anything nice about Mark. I gave him way too much already. Because the time is a kicking. So,
well, at least one of y'all be invited for Sunday night supper. KB, when you come back to town?
So let's step into the segment of the podcast that I always get really nervous about. And folks, this is a work in progress, and I don't know where this thing is going to go, but we're going to do our game segment. And for this episode, we're calling Would You Rather? And so, Mr. Raskin, take it away.
Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. All right, first one up for each of you is, would you rather have unlimited money to pay for renovations or unlimited time for do-it-yourself projects?
Oh, I'll jump in, Al. I am not an artist. I don't have a really strong view there. If I see something I like, I'm like, let's go, let's move. So I am all about hiring somebody for renovation than figuring it out myself.
I agree. I don't like hammers. My wife Jan does all the hammer and screwdrivers, all that stuff. So I say renovations.
All right. Next one. Would you rather have a Texas accent and live in New York, or have a New York accent and live in Texas?
I would never want to have a New York accent and live in Texas. That seems like a bad combination. Seems easy, right?
Yes. I'll take a Texas accent, because you know what comes along with that? A whole bunch of warmth and friendliness and openness, and I don't ever want to lose that.
Excellent. All right, I've got 2 more for y'all. Would you rather have skin that changes color based on your emotions, or tattoos that appear all over your body depicting what you did yesterday? I will repeat that. Would you rather have skin that changes color based on your emotions, or tattoos that appear all over your body depicting what you did yesterday?
I got to go with the first, because the second sounds terrible.
It's so terrible. Plus, I have a little needle phobia, so I don't know that I'm going to get a tattoo myself. Every one of my kids has them, and that's great. But yeah, I think I'll go with the skin.
All right, this next one and my final one for the day. Would you rather?
Raskin, you made these up. These, these weren't on the script, Raskin.
Would you rather work an overtime shift with your annoying boss or spend a full day with your mother-in-law?
Oh, I'm taking my mother-in-law. She's the greatest.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll take my mother-in-law.
Yeah, I love Mary Lou, my mother-in-law. It's her all day long.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind hanging out with Tim, a little extra. That wouldn't be too bad.
Well, interesting that y'all then are just by default considering him your annoying boss, since you assume that's who I was talking about.
No, I thought you said our boss. So we right? I didn't say annoying boss. Now you're trying to get us in trouble.
You're our boss. Come on, Raskin. Let's just be clear. You're our boss.
Well, Mark, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. And again, thanks for everything you do. And hopefully we can have you back again sometime.
Look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Right. Thanks,
Bud.
Well, KB, that kind of wraps it up. So just as a quick reminder, we want to just thank everybody for listening or viewing. Obviously, this is our second podcast. So learning a lot as we go, but we appreciate all the feedback that we received on our first episode. And just kind of a quick reminder that you can find this podcast really on all the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, not, what did I say, Venmo the last time? Did I say it was Venmo? It's Vimeo, right? So anywhere that you can find your podcasts, you should be able to find this podcast. And we also just want to remind everybody that going forward, we're always looking to include interesting folks at PrimeLending. So if you have anybody that has a great story to tell or somebody that you work with that you just think would be really fun for us to have a conversation with, please send us a recommendations. You can reach us at the East Meets West at PrimeLending.com, East Meets West at PrimeLending.com email. So shoot us a note. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.